Okay, cool. And then I'll just start back over here.
Perfect. All right, people, let's go, Jay. Come on, let's go. Jay, you're up. No, not really. We can see the right now.
We got you in the front. We got you down, buddy. Nice try.
All right, I'm signing off. Please silence your phones. All right, guys, welcome to Noam Chomsky Day. 8th annual. I can't believe it. It started as just a little idea with some friends, some roommates, and now it's just the best event of the year. Second to Triathlon, right? So we're doing a couple things differently this year. First of all, we have a featured artist, Raina. It's not shameless self-promotion. I begged her to do it. Major peer pressure, but her stuff is set up over here, and you can just like grab some stuff and pay her. Right? PayPal, it's all there. We all know how that stuff works. The back room by the jackets, there's a plant giveaway. I basically have more plants than I can keep in my house, so please take whatever plants you see on that table, walk home with them, and also there's a pot your own cutting station if you're into that. So just feel free to get to it. We're doing a new format this year. We're going to try to keep presentations to 5 minutes.
Yeah, Jason.
Except for 3 feature presentations, this being one of them. And we're going to do this in blocks. So we're going to do like a couple presentations, and we're going to stop, we're going to get some food, socialize, and we're going to come back and we're going to do some more to break it up a little bit. At 5 minutes, if you're a presenter, I'm going to be waving this flag. And then at 7 minutes, the alarm's going to go off. And then, okay, bathroom. One bathroom all the way in the back room. Another one right here. It's just at the top of the steps. Use Ariel's towel, not mine. And listen, everybody reaches around the back and dries in the back. It's not clever. You gotta actually dry from the front. You'll be the only one. Y'all know you do it. All right. I am equally as unprepared as probably every other presenter here, except for Mark, who didn't get to go last year, so he's a year in advance. But
Wow.
So happy Noam Chomsky Day. For those of you who don't know, Noam Chomsky Day is a yearly celebration that we have. It's a call to action to ask you to decide for yourself who you want to celebrate and why, rather than doing the tired tradition over and over and over again that have long lost their meaning. Are you recording? Yeah, I think so. Halfway through. Camille, are we recording? Perfect. So there's this comic I love called Strange Planet by Nathan Pyle. And the idea of it is that he talks about like our everyday things from the perspective of aliens. So in this comic, they're drinking wine and he says, I'm serving our oldest, or this is our oldest liquid. It was in the basement. The other one says, thank you for never drinking it. Right. And like, these are like rituals we do every single day. And it's funny just seeing it in fresh eyes. Here's another one. We want to ingest some mild poison. Do you want mild poison in the long cylinder or stronger poison in the short cylinder? Can we purchase both? Yes, for it is joyful hour. Is it still joyful hour? It is joyful hour for 2 more hours. So with that in mind, let's talk about how we celebrate Jesus, the birth of Jesus, right? Which is the segue to my Noam Chomsky mini-series. The first edition is Santa Claus. So I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive into Santa. Which, like, if you think about it, he kind of has nothing to do with the original holiday. So the Santa that we all know actually comes from 1931. He was commissioned by Haddon Hubbard, Sunblum, he did this for Coca-Cola. And that's like where the image of Santa Claus comes from. But like, let's think about this guy. He's not without his flaws. First of all, he's kind of like a big brother that watches over you all the time. He's watching your every move, marking it down, naughty or nice. By the way, shout out to Jason. This is an AI, these are AI generated images. You guys remember Jason's presentation from the last year? It encouraged me to get into that. Not trying to ruin Christmas, but the 1,523-year age gap between Mr. and Mrs. Claus does not sit well with me. Santa employs slave labor, which is funny because it just like it's a cover up for like the real situation, which is like kind of exactly the same thing, just without the elf suits. Is that fireplace? So good. And then there's a big focus on, you know, consumption, commercialism. Actually, it's funny because the Grinch kind of had it right. Grinch, I'm not a fan of materialism of Christmas, an entire town for some reason. I hope he dies alone. And then there's the focus for a month on like, you know, buying and consumption instead of a focus on maybe other things that could matter in our community, right? And this is another AI. I did these as AI to like create a fire that looks like a Christmas tree and blah blah. So again, Jason, thank you. So for this installment, I want to do a little dive into like other versions of Santa Claus before 1930s. So the first one is the Krampus, of course, German, Bavarian. The Krampus is a horned anthropomorphic creature who is said to accompany Saint Nick to visits of children during the night of the 5th of December, that was last night, immediately before the feast of Saint Nick on tonight, December 6th. He rewards children with well-behaved children with gifts, while the Krampus punishes badly behaved ones with birch rods. Krampus means dead or rotten, and claw, and he's a half goat. So that's a great one, the Krampus. You gotta love him. The great version of Santa. Another one, this is a Dutch one, Zwart Piet. This is Santa's sidekick, Black Pete. We have friends who don't see anything wrong with this. Because like that's what the culture is, and like that's why it's important to kind of rethink your norms, because what was okay at one point may not be okay today. What really baffles me about Zwart Piet is, okay, so he's black because he goes down the chimney, so that's soot. But I don't understand the red lips, and I don't understand the curly hair. So like,
Explain it to me.
can you? You want to do it?
No.
Okay, cool. Here's another version of Santa. So in Finland, they had, I think it's Nutapuki, which was like, these were evil spirits that would go door to door demanding gifts and leftovers. Pretty creepy. So they made like a nicer version of him, which is the Jolapuki, where he instead knocks on the door and asks if you have any leftovers. And he has a phrase, Anko Tola Kitilapsa. Are there any well-behaved children here? And these are great photos of him, like feasting on a goat and like whipping some child and boiling one. And then my favorite version of Santa, the Santa that wants you to trip balls. Shout out to Courtney. So here's the theory of this one. This originates from a like a North Pole indigenous people. This is just a theory. This is not necessarily exactly, you know, the comparison, but this is like an idea of where it originated from. So there's the Amanita muscaria mushroom, also known as the fly agaric. Look at the colors, red, white, and it grows under pine trees. And this has hallucinogenic properties, but it's also very toxic. So on the winter solstice, that's December 21st, which is very close to December 25th. They'll do like a ritual. And so here's how it works. It's a toxic mushroom, but you take a reindeer and you feed the mushrooms to the reindeer, and then the reindeer can like handle all the toxins, and then it pees, but the psychedelics are still in the pee, and then you turn that thing into a margarita, and you've got a Christmas that you'll never forget.
And this year, in the fridge.
Reindeer pee.
It's one of those bottles of wine. We just don't go.
Also, this is yeah, guys, come on in. Sit down. Alice, Maya, come on. This is also like AI assist. This is a theory. This is
There's even more to that.
and then legend has it. You know more?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Wait, are you done with it?
Oh, you
Oh.
interject.
That they would dry them in the trees because there's no other place to dry it. So you dry it on the pine tree, decorating like a Christmas tree. And the way that you deliver the goods for the celebration is when there's snow piled up. The only way into the cabin
The yurt.
is through the chimney.
Yeah, he's right.
Oh, you're
No, I actually kind of omitted that because but that's great that you included that.
Good balance.
So yeah, and then like basically they would come back from their trip and share their experiences, the psychedelic experience with the rest of the community. So that's a great theory, and take it or leave it. But then again, yeah, nice guys. You can tell who does mushrooms here. But then again, you also take weather advice from an oversized rodent. So who are you to say anything? So let's go back to like our society where things make sense, right? Like the stuff we're used to, because that stuff sounds silly. So if you know, you know. So if you're celebrating Halloween, if you're celebrating All the Saints, or if you're celebrating the day we broke bread with the Native Americans and celebrate family values, the day after Thanksgiving, or celebrating the resurrection of Jesus, or the day Columbus discovered an entire new continent, you might realize that kind of none of this stuff makes any sense anyway. So the idea behind Noam Chomsky Day, once again, is to unplug from these traditions that we do over and over again that have long lost their meaning, and ask ourselves, who do we want to celebrate? Where do we find meaning? And we share it amongst each other. So without further ado, we have 10 more presentations ahead of us. And hey, Buns. And let's get started on Noam Chomsky Day. Camille, how do I get this thing up? You know who's next? I think it's Meryem. Yeah, we're gonna do Meryem and either Maya or Paul, and then we're gonna take a break.
So shout out to Raina and Garner for the great idea. This year I thought we could turn Noam Chomsky on its head, and rather than celebrating good things, let's celebrate bad things. Yeah, just kidding, we're not doing that. So for the next 5 to 7 minutes, no more than 7, you can hear me talk about how much I love my house. So I live less than a 5-minute walk from here. We moved into our house in 2016. And we're currently under contract on a new house, which makes me incredibly sad, but also really happy, and it's gonna be great. But I'm gonna sidestep for a second because I put this presentation together earlier, and that contract's like, I literally right before this had a call with the listing agent, and I don't know, it's maybe blowing up. If anyone here knows Marcia Brunswick, knows about mold remediation,
Oh, my.
or knows about basement waterproofing, talk to me after the presentation. But anyway, this is our house in spring. That is a dogwood tree. My favorite native tree. It turns bright red, like purple leaves. It's one of the first ones to get color in the fall. It's one of the first to flower in the spring. Wonderful native tree. So this is us, my husband and I, when we moved there in 2000, what did I say, 16? Fun fact about those porch chairs. That is evidence of the only crime I've ever been a victim of. Someone stole those porch chairs. Yeah. But joke's on them, because as happy as I look, they were incredibly uncomfortable. Okay, fun facts about the house. It is 100 years old, maybe. If you look at the title, it says 1930, but it had oil lighting in it, which no one put into houses past 1920. Now, if we sell it, we'll say 1930 because no one wants to hear it's a really old house. It has exposed brick wall along one whole side, and it's an interior brick wall. So fun fact about interior brick walls. At the time that they were building houses, when they did this, they would have the brick masons who were apprentices and still learning what to do the interior walls because they thought no one would see it. They also would take the reject bricks where when they were making it, there were flaws, and they would put them on the interior walls. So fingerprints, really big fingerprints.
Oh, my God.
Weird bricks that are just randomly like a different color. And then this is my favorite part. So it's old brick and mortar. Does anyone know what went into a really old, like original mortar?
Horsehair.
Yes, that's horsehair. You can touch it in our house if you visit. And added bonus of our brick wall is oh yeah. There was a hole and my mom plugged it with a paper towel 5 years ago, and the paper towel is still there. An added bonus of having one of these lovely brick walls is every headshot I've ever done is in front of this brick wall. Because it's an old house, and before we moved into it, basically no one had done any work on it, and which is like very obvious. It then has some of the like original furnishings. So all cabinets used to have on the left there these incredibly impractical but pretty little cabinet latches. If you've been in an old house, they all have these very impractical but very pretty cabinet latches. All the doors are glass doorknobs, and then that's solid brass on the back there. One of my favorite things when we moved into the house is on the right there is all the light switch plates are also solid brass, but when we moved in, they were painted. So if you want to feel like a rock star, but you actually don't know anything about house improvement, and you move into a house, take the paint off those light switches, you just put it in a slow cooker with vinegar for like an hour, and it comes right off.
It's called the landlord, it's called the landlord special.
I felt like a genius. Another clue that the house is 100 years old. On the left is our fireplace. So that's original mosaic to the house. And when they built the houses on the block, pretty much everyone has like a real fireplace now, but because no one renovated our house, we still have the mosaic. And they put in the mosaics because you weren't allowed to have fireplaces when the house was built. It was against fire code in the city because fires were like still a real thing people were afraid of.
Aerial fire.
Some of the fun things in the house are things that we've done. So like a painted mural when I had my son, or the hole that he made when he lent his chair back, even though I was telling him, don't lean your chair. Or we so this is one of my favorite things. I personally changed the vanity in the bathroom, and we didn't replace any of the tiles, but I didn't think about it when I was picking out a vanity, and it was raised and there was no tile underneath. But I found from what is it? The people who do the home renovations, Habitat Restore, the exact same tiles that were in our bathroom in Habitat Restore, and it was less than $5 to get a whole bunch of them. So I think you can't tell unless you look underneath where I just didn't finish the job. But of course, the best part about the house are the memories we've had in it. So the Halloweens as Tractor Ted or Waldo, the Christmases where my daughter is still inexplicably dressed as Waldo. You know, the memories I have of working from home the last 2 years. the lows of that, the highs of that. The home maintenance that we've done, just keeping up the house, all the yard work. There we go.
What street are you on, man? You're like talking to the wrong. I didn't even know where you were. Yeah, all right.
Oh, that's Alice's.
Sorry.
I just made it.
I
It's
was
a
just
long
looking at
story.
your
Yeah.
name, but yeah, I got you. I got you. Wait, did I just
That's
click on that again?
Alice's.
I'm sorry. Please,
I shared it with him.
is
Like,
it this one?
oh, yes.
Okay, cool. I can read. I promise. Hooray.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Greetings. Oh, hello. I'm Maya Walker, and I'm gonna walk you through what I think is one of the unsung heroes of Delaware's native fauna. So first and foremost, photosynthesis. If it's been a while since you've taken a biology class, yeah. Just as a small recap, is when a plant or algae or cyanobacteria, also known as autotrophs, convert carbon dioxide with water and energy from sunlight into some sort of form of energy. So glucose, sugar, carbons, whereas we heterotrophs cannot do that. And classically, we're taught that autotrophs are the only ones who are capable of photosynthesis. But we're not often taught as much that animals can also do that, not with chlorophyll because they're not capable of it, but by working together with autotrophs and symbiotic or mutualistic relationships. And some of the more known examples of that are things like coral or sea anemones or sea sponges. And as you can see on this handy cladogram, porifera, which is what sea sponges are part of, and cnidaria, which is what sea anemones and coral are a part of, are phylogenetically pretty different from chordata, which are vertebrates. And it was thought up until a couple decades ago that vertebrates could not enter endosymbiotic relationships with autotrophs until the spotted salamander. Wow, so cute. I know, it's beautiful. And this is actually a Delaware native. It breeds and lays its eggs in vernal pools, which are temporary, seasonally flooded puddles, basically. It's more of a pond situation, but they are able to avoid predators by laying them in vernal pools because fish don't exist in them and they don't have their eggs predated. But the drawback is that there's not a lot of oxygen because it's stagnant water. So they're not able to reproduce as effectively, which is why they have developed at some point a symbiosis with a type of algae, which is called Euphila amblystomatis. And that literally translates from Greek to mean salamander egg lover. And the egg mass on the left is a regular salamander egg mass, and on the right, that is an egg mass that's combined with the algae. So this is a unique relationship because it's the only vertebrate that's capable of endosymbiosis and ectosymbiosis. So basically, it exists outside of the egg capsules as well as inside and actually in the salamander cells themselves. And the same algae exists in other salamanders in the same genus, but they're not inside of the cells. It's only with this one spotted salamander. So what does the salamander get from the algae living in its cells? It gets increased oxygen, which helps with embryo development. There's more oxygen diffusion that they wouldn't get otherwise from living in a pond, which reduces fatalities and abnormalities in development. It also removes waste from, what the embryos excrete and carbon dioxide. And it also can sometimes produce some antimicrobial compounds. What does the algae get from it? It doesn't get predated as often because pretty much everything that would be in a vernal pool will predate algae. And it also gets ammonia and carbon dioxide. And these two things don't have to coexist. There are many times where the algae just lives freely in vernal pools and salamander eggs grow without them. They just benefit more when both of them are together. So there are a lot of unknowns, which I think is what makes this kind of interesting. No one knows how the algae actually gets into the cell because it's unknown how an organism would enter another organism, especially a vertebrate, because normally there would be some sort of response to something that's foreign. But interestingly enough, the algae actually sends out a stress signal, whereas the salamander does not. So no one really knows why that is at all. Some people think that the algae is just in the female's oviducts. Other people disagree with that. No one knows why they've grown together, but they have. In conclusion, I actually put this together so I could show off this spider that I found in a pond. She was very chunky. I was a big fan of her body shape, and she was that thick because she was gravid, which is what herpetologists call pregnant salamanders. So she was full of eggs, probably full of algae. Here are my references. If you, I'm full of shit. And if you have any questions, I do charge per question.
That is hard to follow. Mine's not nearly gonna be as interesting. Do you know what you're doing? Also, I don't know if I want to stand up here. Maybe, can someone run the PowerPoint for me? Hit the button.
Oh, sweet.
Thanks.
What do you guys see here? What was your what was your?
Oh, I got it.
Oh, it's the
I
first.
see it. Yes. Yeah. Sweet.
No. Well, an example of listening and then.
Oh, you gotta click them?
I love that you took a deep breath. Like, oh,
This, maybe no one right over. This
How do I not
from
present it?
slideshow, thank you back. I recognize it.
Okay.
Yeah, just click the slideshow. Like
Slideshow, got it.
Yeah.
Oh, heck yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I know, but I like to. Fair enough. It's
I'm
not
coming
my
in.
style, but it is. Oh, I can appreciate that.
Hey, listen.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of you know that I'm a counselor. Yeah. I don't have my, okay, so I don't have my master's in counseling yet. I'm working on it. I graduated in May, but I am seeing clients, so I guess I can put myself in counseling. So I have been seeing a lot of people. I have almost 200 hours of counseling, and I've been noticing that one of the things that I like to help with, and something that I just see a lot now, is communication styles and the way that people listen and understand each other. And so I thought it'd be cool to do a very brief sort of demonstration of two different types of listening styles. And I just put this slide in here because listening is hard. It's actually something that our brains are not really designed to do efficiently. We tend to forget or misunderstand or just not receive about 60% of what we hear. And so and one of the reasons for that is just, our brains receive all kinds of signals all the time. We have neural systems that first of all, everything that we see, touch, hear, taste goes through our spinal cord, and then it goes through our amygdala, and the amygdala is like the bodyguard, and it figures out whether or not it's a threat, And so we got like all these things happen before it ever gets to the front part of our brain where we do all the actual thinking. And so I have to explain that to a lot of people. And I'm hoping that this is helpful and not confusing. So we're going to start with this story. I'm going to tell you, for those who can't read it, I'm alone on the side of the road. My car is broken. My phone is dead. And I lost my pants. My plane leaves in an hour and I don't know what to do. Imagine that we just switched places. Ask me right now, ask me any questions that you need to know to understand this situation.
What happened to your pants?
Good question.
Did you drink the reindeer piss?
That's a really good question.
What is your top priority right now? Are we getting to the airport or are we taking care of the car?
Getting to the airport,
Yeah.
taking care of the car, taking care of the pants. More questions. This is really good.
What's the plane ride?
What's the importance of the plane ride?
Yeah.
Are you geographically from the airport?
How far away am I from the airport?
Didn't we switch places? Aren't we the person stuck?
I used to ask.
Am I safe? Does it, okay, yes,
How close are you to the nearest house with a phone?
great questions. These are all really, really good questions. Keep going.
Related to each other, or they just like things that are occurring. If your car is broken down, but that has nothing to do with the rest of the situation.
Did you have the pants before the car was
So, these are all really good questions. And the theme that I noticed about all these questions is that they all ask about the situation. How did I get there? What is happening? Where do I need to go? They're all things to kind of understand the physical reality of where I'm at. And now I want to switch this a little bit. Same question, same story, but I want you to ask different questions now. I want you to try to understand what it's like, not what would you ask if you were in my situation, but what do you think it is like to be me? And what questions do you need to ask to understand that?
Are you scared?
Great question.
How can I help you?
Great question. But a little bit more on the side of situation, but it's a good question.
Are your legs cold?
Yes.
If it's me, I'm worried about where the nearest police officers are.
And that's a really good concern, but it's not quite asking what is it like to be me.
Are you having a good time?
Great. That is a good question. Yeah.
Do you have ADHD?
Do I have ADHD? Oh, 100% ADHD. Yeah.
Again? How do you feel?
Am I having a good question? Am I having a good time? How do I feel? Yeah. In this situation, the best way to connect with me is to ask, what is my internal situation like? How am I processing it? See, with the asking questions about sort of the external reality, you are helping the situation, but in some cases, that might not actually be the role that you need to take. And when you start asking questions like that, it actually adds a layer of separation between you and the person that you're trying to help, because what the person really probably needs in a situation so fucking crazy as this, like, how did you even get here, man? Like, what is going on? But the thing is, there's not a whole lot that you can do to fix someone's situation when they are in, like, aside from pants. In the case of a lot of people that I talk to, I don't try to offer solutions. I don't try to ask about the situational reality. because, I mean, it's important, it's context. But the thing that's really important is knowing what it is like for them to be there. Because when you know what it's like for someone to be there, you can not just sit in their shoes, but actually sit next to them and try to help them work through it together. It's the best way to form an alliance around the problem, rather than becoming an authority on what to do about the problem. That's it.
I love it.
Oh yeah, wait, sorry. This is the difference between some understanding the situation and understanding someone. I forgot about this side. Sympathy is like saying, "Oh man, it sucks. Do you need a ladder?" Empathy is getting down in the hole. Thing.
Now we.
It's so dark. Now we are both in a hole. And we got the ladder. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna take a 15 get some food and drinks, and we'll reconvene.
Is there open to questions?
Yeah.
Are
I can see, so not school counseling, but wait, what's that?
Yeah, but he doesn't even have a master's.
Yeah.
Okay. We're a charter school, I think anyone.
So we're gonna reconvene in 15 minutes. Next up in this order is Juliet, Andy, Jason, Charlie. All right. Get your Raina swag.
Raina swag.
Get your plants.
Far away. Can you hear me? Oh, can you hear me? Oh, okay, great. So, my perception of the Noam Chomsky celebration is to think of somebody who is extremely inspiring. And one of the people that I actually learned about quite recently is this guy, Norman Borlaug. And I think he's one of the most inspiring people that I ever heard about. So he was called the father of the Green Revolution. People actually believe that he saved more than 1 billion people from starvation over the 20th century. So we're talking 100 years ago. And to give you just a little bit of background, he was born in Iowa, and I know born on a farm, 1914. I know you've all heard that cliche about the grandfather says, "Well, I walked to school 5 miles in the snow." Norman Borlaug really did. Maybe not 5 miles, but he was 5 years old. It was 1.5 miles to a one-room schoolhouse. He was in kindergarten, coming home. There was a blizzard. He fell into a snowbank, and I don't know if you know what it's like when people freeze. You know, they sort of fall asleep, and it's pleasant, and they don't know anything's wrong. And he was very close to freezing to death. But his cousin, her name was Sina, and she went back, found him, slapped him across the face to wake him up, and she probably did save his life. So the only reason I think about that is here's this guy who saved so many lives. He nearly died at age 5. He did spend his childhood working, doing hard physical labor on his parents' farm in Iowa. He did get to the University of Minnesota. He was on the wrestling team. He was actually so good at wrestling, and he came up with a lot of new moves that nobody had ever thought about. So he was actually inducted into the Wrestling Hall of Fame. However, his academic life was he got a bachelor's degree in forestry, then later a PhD in plant pathology. And before he did anything else, we have to remember this is the time of the Great Depression. People were starving to death in the United States. So Norman Borlaug, he was working with the Civilian Conservation Corps. This was a program that Franklin Roosevelt started, and basically it was just to create jobs for young men who didn't have jobs. And what Norman Borlaug saw is that a lot of these young men, maybe they weren't starving to death, although some were, but a lot of them were suffering from malnutrition. And he saw that as they got paid and they could buy food, it was like they transformed right before his eyes. Their morale improved. They stopped getting sick all the time, because if you're malnourished, you get sick. And that made a huge impression on him. That's really what created his desire to make sure people would always have enough to eat. So he remembered that. And oddly, he actually worked right here in Wilmington, Delaware from 1942 to 1944. He worked for DuPont. And when World War II started, he did try to enlist in the US Army. The Army said to him, no, we need you as a chemist or something. And basically they knew he was really bright. They said, look, we need you to figure out a glue that isn't going to dissolve in salt water. They had this really kind of terrible situation. The Japanese controlled Guadalcanal, that's in the South Pacific, and there were some US Marines that were stranded. The only way they could get food to these Marines, they had to bring it by speedboat at night, but they had to like drop it in the water and hope it would float to shore for the Marines. But the glue on the crates was dissolving, and so the food wasn't getting to the Marines. So I know it sounds crazy, but Norman Borlaug, he only needed about 3 or 4 weeks, and he figured out a kind of adhesive that didn't dissolve in salt water. That way they could get the food to the Marines. So he was given an opportunity to do research on wheat in Mexico. And all the good guys here in Wilmington at DuPont said, no, you can't leave DuPont. We'll pay you twice as much. They really wanted him to stay at DuPont, but he didn't really care about money. So what he saw is, remember, he grew up on a farm in Iowa. He saw that the farmers, not just in Nebraska, but all through the Great Plains, there was something that was called wheat rust. It's a blight, it's a fungus, and it was destroying the wheat crop. So when he got this chance to do research in Mexico, he said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And he left DuPont, went to Mexico. One thing I probably should explain from the map that you see there. I don't know if you can see there are two towns, and they're in red. So the town in the north is Yaqui Valley, that's in red, and the town in southern Mexico is Chapingo. So he started out doing the research in Chapingo in Mexico, and that's where he was supposed to stay. But he realized that if he went north, there could be 2 growing seasons for wheat. He could grow wheat in the north in Mexico as well. So now he runs into huge bureaucratic roadblocks. He has this horrible supervisor. The guy's name is George Herrar. George Herrar says, no, you can't go to Yaqui Valley. You have to stay here in Chapingo. So Herrar refused to give him any resources, wouldn't give him a tractor. And so Norman Borlaug himself, he was walking behind the oxen, pushing the plow, because he really, he wanted to do all this research. And there was a farmer. Well, this is what happened. He was working 12 hours a day, and just to come back, this one farmer, the farmer saw him pushing the plow behind the oxen. The Mexican farmer took pity on him and said, hey, you can borrow my tractor. So he borrows the tractor, he plants the field with wheat, and then this is the part that just blew me away about Norman Borlaug. He was spending about 12 hours a day under the broiling hot Mexican sun. He was using a pair of tweezers. He would pluck out the stamen of the wheat flour. And then, I don't know if you can see from that photograph, but there are these tiny envelopes over each wheat plant. So he puts the envelope with a label, he's got to remember which strain it is. And he waits 5 days, and then 5 days later, he puts the stamen of a different strain of wheat so that stamen remember, that's the male part of the flower, and that'll fertilize the pistil and the ovary. And he did this for 16 years. And he developed 6,000 different individual hybrids of, crossing one strain of wheat with another strain of wheat. And sure enough, when you do research with plants, it takes a long time. But he did eventually find a strain of wheat that was very high yield. It was resistant to this blight, this rust, and it was a strain of dwarf wheat. So fast forward about 20 years, 1960s, 90% of Mexico's wheat crops were using the semi-dwarf wheat strains that Noam Borlaug developed. They were growing so much wheat that Mexico could actually export wheat. So then he was invited by both India and Pakistan to try to develop strains of wheat that would grow well in India and Pakistan. He went over there, and at the exact time he got to India and Pakistan, all of a sudden there was a war because India and Pakistan were fighting over Kashmir, which they still are fighting over. But, Borlaug didn't quit. He was planting wheat and all these artillery shells are exploding, but he just ignored it. He just kept planting wheat. So the strains of wheat that he developed for India and Pakistan worked so well that neither India nor Pakistan had to import wheat. They were becoming self-sufficient. There were farmers in many countries in Latin America. His research also went to the Middle East, Turkey. Turkey was using his hybrid strains. His research methods were also used to develop varieties of dwarf wheat in Africa. And sometimes people would ask him, they would say, well, shouldn't we just, is this really a good thing for the environment? People, even the best researchers get a lot of questions. And his response would be, okay, remember, the thing I love the most are the forests. And the argument that he used is if you have a high yield crop, you use less land, and that way you can keep the forests where they are. You don't have to cut down the forests to grow more food.
What's why a dwarf variety? Is it easier to harvest? Is that the reason? Why a dwarf variety of wheat?
Great question. Yeah. So he wanted to plant this dwarf variety. Well, at first he wasn't successful, and the wheat he was planting was way too tall. And if you have the stalks being very tall, but you have really good seeds on the tall stalks, the wheat is just going to bend over. So I know it sounds silly, it's just mechanical, but he realized that if you have dwarf wheat, it can hold the heavy seeds that are really good seeds, but it doesn't bend over. So yeah, really simple mechanics. Yeah. So yeah, as I say, his idea was to get the highest possible yield. That way you don't cut down the forests. And 1970, he won the Nobel Prize for Peace. 1977, he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. 2007, he received the Congressional Gold Medal. He did pass away in 2009, but he did live to be 95 years old. And so I'll stop here because I know we have 5 minutes. I guess I would just end by saying, sometimes if we look at the world, it can seem a little depressing, but I think of people, well, actually, Eric, you've taught me to do this with the Noam Chomsky celebration. If I just think of one inspiring person like Norman Borlaug, it makes me feel better. So I'll stop there.
Yeah. I was making a final
Juliet. Hang on. We never heard of it. Everybody has a ball.
Yes.
We might need to know the ball.
For what?
No, I mean, it's.
They're probably.
It's this one, right?
Yep.
Center row, but too many that are Zoom. What are Zoom one of
Okay, while we have a little bit of downtime, I want to make an announcement. Anything in the kegerator is up for grabs. Any wine up there is up for grabs. Don't forget to buy your Raina stuff and don't forget to get your plants. Don't leave without plants.
There's a no day policy. There's a no day policy.
So I've had that with my.
Oh, I heard
Yeah, I don't think capital.
Sorry,
My goal is just yeah, like how to
okay, it is today. Sorry, I thought we had lost it.
Can I go? Thank you. Okay. So from a real life hero to a fictional hero, who didn't save anyone, but he inspired us all to be better versions of ourselves. Captain Jean-Luc Picard, played by Sir Patrick Stewart. You know, he's known for lots of other roles, but this was my favorite. This is his ship, the Enterprise. This is a sci-fi series that I grew up with that explored the nature of humanity, ethics, diversity, the exploration of the unknown, the pursuit of peace, topics like artificial intelligence, personal issues like the challenges of relationships, and larger issues like the potential for a utopian future. It was set, you know, a couple hundred years in the future because we're clearly not there yet. In the Star Trek universe, there was a global government that had eliminated poverty. Society wasn't organized around money or goods, which is an appropriate thing to celebrate for Noam Chomsky Day, I think, but around the personal improvement and the pursuit of knowledge. To be fair, they used fictional technology that's impossible based on the known laws of physics.
Yeah.
But the premise is basically that Earth is the center of a federation of planets, and they send people out to explore different corners of the galaxy and contact aliens and negotiate and things like that, while remaining human and true to human values and their real human problems on the ship that they explore through the series. Captain Picard is their leader. He's the most empathic of captains. Unlike Captain Kirk, he doesn't get into very many fist fights. He is known for his diplomacy, his logical reasoning, and his ethical principles. And while the Enterprise has things like weaponry like photon torpedoes and phasers, and takes traditions from the US Navy, its primary mission is exploration, and Picard kind of embodies that spirit. So just I can't tell you everything that he did in all the episodes, but this is one of my favorite episodes. It's called Darmok, and what happens in this episode is their little gadget that's called the Universal Translator kind of fails them in this instance. So it's able to translate these aliens' words, but it just comes out as gibberish. So these aliens are saying things like, Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. What does that mean? I mean, it's clearly English. The translator worked, but it can't tell you the meaning of the words. So the two ships meet. They're trying to figure out how to talk to each other. The alien captain gets fed up and sort of kidnaps Picard and himself and beams him down to the planet together. And so they're there on this planet. They still can't talk to each other. The alien captain throws Picard a knife, goes, Temba, his arms wide. And Picard's like, do you want to fight me? Because the alien captain had a knife himself, but he didn't want to fight him. So they go to sleep that night. And while they're sleeping, Picard hears a noise. They wake up, and the alien captain's standing there in a defensive posture, and they have to fight this invisible monster. The alien captain's wounded in the process, and Picard treats his wounds after the monster is beaten away for a little bit, but it's not dead yet. During the exchange, the crew of the ship are still in orbit and they can't talk to each other. And Riker, the first officer, is like, you kidnapped my captain. I'm pissed off. And he's trying to find ways to use the technology to get Captain Picard back. And the alien ship keeps fending him off because apparently that's what the alien captain has ordered his first officer to do. And so the ships are about to mutually destroy each other because they're equal in armament. So it seems like it's up to Captain Picard to save the crew once again. But during their time on the planet, while the alien ship is kind of blocking all the attempts of the Enterprise to save Captain Picard, Captain Picard figures out that the alien language kind of works as like an allegorical story. So Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra, that was the name of a fictional character in this alien's mythology that met this other guy, Darmok and Jalad, met this other guy, Jalad, and they were at this place called Tanagra, and they fought this beast. And the ploy of the alien captain to facilitate communication was to bring them into the same situation so that they would be able to understand through the actual experiencing of the story how to communicate. And Picard figures this out. And right before the I mean, the alien captain unfortunately passes away from his wounds from the beast, and the beast is about to kill Picard, but then the Enterprise figures out a way to beam him up. And when Picard comes back, there's chaos, and the aliens are about to destroy the Enterprise, and the Enterprise is about to destroy the alien ship. But Picard has figured out the language, so he's able to say Temba, his arms wide, which when the alien captain presented him the dagger, that meant I come in peace. So he was able to diffuse the situation. And the aliens say the captain's name was Darmok, and they say Darmok and Picard at L whatever planet, and that's a new vocabulary in their language, and so they were able to facilitate communication. So that's one of the, it's consistently ranked as one of the best episodes of the series, because it illustrates some of the core principles that the show is trying to portray. Very briefly, there was another alien species called the Ferengi. They were driven by greed and accumulation of wealth. They were originally supposed to be the primary adversary for the Enterprise, but they were not sufficiently menacing, so they became sort of comic relief. And in later series, they were sort of redeemed in that they were allowed to join Starfleet. So I kind of like to think that some of the current events that we're going through are kind of like Ferengi taking control, and maybe it's not as bad as we hope. But how Picard would deal, so we can learn from this, how Picard would deal with the Ferengi. He would employ diplomacy and understanding that their primary motivation is profit. So he would try and use their greed against them to achieve his goals, while also upholding Starfleet's ethical principles. And what can we learn from Picard in general, and Star Trek in general? A hopeful vision for the future, in contrast with most fiction, sci-fi, which is dystopian, and often flying in the face of current events. Forbes did a piece, I guess someone was a Star Trek fan, and he writes for Forbes now, in 5 leadership lessons that you can learn from Picard. Speak to people in the language they understand. I can't go through all the examples he used in the piece, but it's okay to ask for help when you're overwhelmed. Picard is famous for, during moments of crisis, there was often some downtime somehow, and he would gather his crew into the ready room and go around and be like, options. What are your options, Mr. Data? What are your options, Mr. Worf? And Mr. Worf always wanted to go to war or attack. But Picard very rarely took that advice. So
what about the Prime Directive?
The Prime Directive is the idea that you're not supposed to interfere in the affairs of an alien culture, I guess, until after they've developed warp technology, and then you can like interact with them.
I thought that was the #1 rule, that of any rule you had to obey that one.
Yeah.
First.
Yeah. So that's it.
Question: how do you feel about the Picard TV show spin-off?
Oh, I liked it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay, Raina,
How do you feel?
who plays Picard?
Patrick. Yeah, he's a British.
How do you feel? I mean, is it
Yes.
Okay, all right. If you
Here.
Okay.
at the beginning.
You have to find a series that best fits you.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own.
Oh, Mike, you cannot make it. Great, I would love to take more time. This is fun. Hey.
You want to
God, I just thought I should I thought I had to do that.
People that are in there.
I like how they kind of like had it already.
See?
Care about the science. I went back to yeah, I have. I'm sure you know. I don't. I yeah, that's about rank choice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's super cool. Basically, no, I'm gonna make this matter.
No.
Yeah, it's gonna be a.
Not ready. I really like. Yeah. And like, like a lot of.
Charley, do you wanna go? Yeah. Can you give me a minute? Yeah.
Also, I saw her.
Yeah,
no, I don't.
My speaker right here.
I love that. And then I watched Picard, and that was really.
They weren't allowed. Stuff coming along.
Yeah.
That was that kind of really.
One moment.
Sorry.
Flowers.
I call the hologram one.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were able to use that because that was in the public.
So we only played the base. Not just like
All right, we're there. Yeah, we got it. All right. All right. How's everyone doing?
Ready?
I'm ready. Ready. I would have started earlier, but no one did a countdown. Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Okay. All right. Hey, everyone. All right. Imagine your mind. I want you to imagine that your mind is a car. You're quickly approaching a road that you don't want to go down. You reach for the steering wheel, but it's not there. You realize you're in the passenger seat.
Oh, where are my pants?
Something else has taken the wheel. It's your emotions. It's your relentless thoughts. It's your internal dialogue that won't shut its freaking mouth. Has anyone else ever found themselves in this situation? Has anyone else sat in, this is an actual picture of Kate. Has anyone else sat in bed unable to turn their thoughts off at the end of the night? Just go to sleep, brain. Please go to sleep. This is the normal part of the human experience. But what if I were to tell you that you don't have to put up with it? There's a way out.
What are you trying to sell us?
Today, we're going to be talking about regaining control of the steering wheel through a brilliant yet simple practice called meditation. Meditation is a simple exercise for your brain, all right, to make it easier for you to have control over where your thoughts are headed. Now, this isn't about pushing thoughts out or compartmentalizing them. It's about being able to access and influence different natural brain states that you experience throughout the day. And today, we're going to learn a little bit about meditation and even try it for ourselves. Yeah. So I just want to now explain a little bit what it is, right? Like, I think every human on earth would benefit from meditation. But before we learn how to meditate, first we have to understand what it is, right? What's it feel like? And then we'll start, so what is and what's it feel like? Meditation, I think, is less of trying to achieve like a state of enlightenment, like the picture on the left. And at least for a little while, it's more like putting down a heavy load and basking in the glory of the relief that follows, letting the blood flow go back into your body and just feeling, yeah. So here's a quote from the person I'm going to be celebrating today with my meditation teacher, Jeff Warren, from an app. It comes to my house.
Gorgeous inventory. The meditation.
I'm going to explain what it is. It's about 30 seconds.
You learn the things you once thought were boring, like breathing, can actually be perfectly fulfilling when you focus on them. That's because any idea of there being a, quote, problem with anything comes from the mind. The mind is like, oh, it's too hot or too cold or too busy or too boring or too whatever, all the opinions. But as the mind begins to settle, guess what? Judgments also settle. What's left is a simpler experience of life, unadorned, gorgeously neutral. There are no problems in the moment, just sensations doing their thing. What a freaking relief. And so you sit in the bare neutrality of things.
So that's Jeff Warren. So what he's saying there, I got to pull my app back up to get the nice noises. So what he's saying is his interpretation of meditation is just getting rid of all the other stuff that's going on and just being there in a calm state. About a year ago, I started this 30-day mindfulness meditation app or course on an app called Calm. That's what I'm playing right now. And it took me about 90 days to get through it, but it was transformative. And Jeff made it meditation very easy and accessible and light. I do about like 2 sessions a week, maybe 3. And after a session, I feel so much better. It only takes 10 minutes. It's amazing. And so for Jeff, thank you for introducing me to meditation. It's been a profoundly positive influence on my life. Jeff explains in his 30-day course that he used to be an extremely reactive person. He explains that he had anger issues. He was completely miserable and overall a pretty much ridiculous person. These are his words in the course. Then he found the practice of meditation. It transformed him. And now he's sharing that practice with others. And I was blown away with how effective it is. So, before I teach you about how to meditate, let's first learn about the brain, okay? Because this is really kind of important. It's kind of cool to think about it. You may not realize it, but our brains are composed of like a whole bunch of different modules, and they all evolved at different times. So some parts of the brain are older than others, and they've been evolved to have like lots of different things in them. Like it's like a Swiss Army knife. It's this well-coordinated team all working together that creates a seamless illusion that it's just one mind, but it's really a whole bunch of pieces working together. And there's different parts of the brain that are responsible for different things. Some regions are like for detecting like important changes, like a loud noise, right? Everybody's brain state just changed right there, right? Then there's some states that are there to help us relax, and some that process sensory input, and some that make us or allow us to sleep and dream. So one of the biggest culprits in how our mind operates, and where we spend a lot of our time, is called the default mode network, or DMN. And the default mode network is your brain's default state when it's not actively focused on something. It's where your mind goes when you're daydreaming, or like if you stop listening to me already, that your mind is going to the default mode network. All right. Oh, I get these sounds back up. There we go. It's also responsible for reflecting on yourself or telling yourself stories. These narratives can be about anything. It could be good, bad, neutral. From appreciating a beautiful sunset, you might say to yourself, wow, I'm so lucky to be seeing this right now. Or to rehashing an argument. I can't believe he said that to me. Or for planning, like, hey, okay, you gotta stop acting, you gotta get some milk, right? Like my mind is constantly going like all those places. Anytime you're thinking in words or creating a story in your head, that's your default mode network at work. And many of us just spend a lot of our time there. It's not inherently bad, but it helps us understand our identity and our past and our future. It's very useful, but sometimes we want to turn that off. It can tear you away from the present moment. And not only that, if your default mode network is at the steering wheel, it can be responsible for emotionally reactive thinking, where you're thinking with your feelings, and easily tip into rumination, where you like cycle on negative thoughts, so you can't turn it off. This type of thinking can be exhausting and unproductive and trigger stress responses in the body. So what happens when you have a stress response in your body? You're running away from a murderer, right? Or, you know, way back, you're running away from a lion, right? Your body's like, get out of here. You get adrenaline to your system, that shot, and you're like, you know, you can run faster than you've ever ran before. Yeah. Like when you're turning off the lights and running upstairs. Yeah. Right? And your body is, what it's doing is it's shutting off non-essential functions. So like you're like, it's like, I don't need like to worry about my kidneys and my liver right now. I got to get out of this situation. So when you have a stress response, you are literally flooding your body with chemicals that are turning off like essential functions to the rest of your body, and it's damaging to your physical health long term. So it's just an important takeaway is that this isn't just like how it affects your mood. It is literally how it affects your physical health. And this is science. Actually, Robert Sapolsky writes about this if anyone reads him. So meditation offers a way to step out of your default mode network, and just like Jeff Warren said earlier, enter a calmer and more neutral state. And as I see the goal of meditation, it's to simply let go of the constant storytellings and labels we place on everything, which for me can be relentless. I don't know about you. And when you give your mind a break by spending time in a neutral state, you start to recognize that your reality is shaped by your perception. And this realization can be truly transformative. It opens up a doorway to a whole new world where you once thought you had control over things you never realized you had control over. It gives you the freedom to choose about how you think and respond rather than being ruled by automatic reactions. So I got a little deep there, but I just wanted to, I'll come back, to earth here. But I just want to make sure that I didn't miss that incredible takeaway. So what would Chomsky Day be without an activity? Yeah. So we're going to get into this. Now we're ready to do it for ourselves. So we're going to do 2 very short sessions. The first one is just going to be a baseline, and then we're going to learn a couple techniques, and then we're going to do it again. So we're here to recognize, let's see. So the first thing we're going to do is recognize how hard it is to remain focused and what it actually feels like to meditate. Oh, I already said that. All right. So here's the first activity. We're going to take 45 seconds. That's it. I'm pulling up a timer right now, 45 seconds. And the whole goal here is, oh, I should have made this in advance. I'll remember for next year.
Reminds me of 45 seconds.
Yeah. I spent all my time troubleshooting. Oops, 45 seconds. All right. So what I want you to do is don't think of anything. And when you do that, notice anytime you get distracted. So anytime you're like, is someone looking at me? Oh, that's a weird painting on the wall. Oh, you moved it. Or this is so awkward, like whatever it is. Ready? Go. All right, we'll just do 30 seconds, this and that. All right. So how'd you do? Was anyone able to think of nothing the entire time?
No, I had like 9.
Yeah, is that like 9, 37? A million. We need a strategy, right? So I'm gonna get you there immediately, okay? With one strategy. Okay. So
What's he trying to sell us?
here's what I want you to think of instead. Instead of thinking, don't think of anything. Okay, what I want you to do instead is notice the next thought that comes into your head. Notice the next thought that comes into your head. Ready? Go.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Just look for it. You're like, just sit there and wait. Just sit there and wait for what the next thought that pops in your head is.
Be mindful.
Okay?
That was actually
Notice the next thought. Ready?
Be the watcher, watching you.
Let's try it. Notice the next thought that comes in your head. Go. All right, open your eyes. Wait.
Fast, fast,
No, was there anything?
I thought I love Jason Hoover and then I just repeated.
Oh, when I do it. When I notice the next thought, Charlie.
When I'm fully noticing the next thought, there is no next thought.
There's no next thought. Right? Why is there no next thought?
Because you're waiting for the next thought.
I'm listening.
Because you're waiting. Yeah. You're getting onto it. There's immediate silence. Okay. And the reason why is because when you're thinking about something, when you're just sitting there trying not to think about anything, you're like your thoughts and yourself are one thing. Okay. And it's when you start to see your thoughts, right? Like this person here, they're looking at their thought, waiting. They're now two parts. They are themselves, the observer, and the thought itself. They created a distance, a separation between themselves and their thoughts. And that's why the thought doesn't come back in. So let me say that again. When you're being distracted by a thought, you're one singular person. And once you identify that you're thinking, you get some distance from that thought and you become two parts, the thought and the person. So the next technique I want to teach you is to pop out of your thought. As soon as you recognize that you're thinking something, okay, you pop out of your thought, just like this person did, popped out of the thought. There's now the thought in them. And then what I like to do is I like to turn my thought into a balloon and let it go. They're biodegradable. They're cornstarch balloons. And then once the balloon goes away, you're just left with yourself again for like 12 seconds until another thought pops in your mind. But then you can pop out of that thought and then you let it go. And that's what meditation is. It's just the practice of recognizing your thoughts, creating space, and then distancing yourself from it. And when you do that, when you pop out and let it go, it's like doing a push-up, just like building muscles. You're building the muscle of creating separation between yourself and your thoughts. All right, so let's try this one more time for 1 minute. Actually, it might just be 45 seconds. Notice when you have a thought, pop out of it and let it go. Okay, ready? Go.
Eric's my thought.
So a thought may pop up and it's okay. Just distance yourself, turn it into a balloon and let it float away. Here we go. How do we do, everyone?
Good.
So to wrap this up, yeah, but now we actually learned what it feels like to do it a little bit. It's not this state that you're trying to be in that's like you're floating on the top of a mountain. It's just being neutral, basking in the glory of neutrality. In everyday life, we often merge our thoughts with our identity, identifying them as part of who we are. And if we're thinking about an argument, for example, you may feel that anger or frustration as if the thought and the feeling are inseparable from you. Same with anxiety and stress and pretty much every other emotionally uncomfortable state. Whoa. Meditation teaches you to notice that thoughts arise and pass, but you're not the thought. Instead, you're the observer. And when you recognize this separation, you become the two parts, the thinker and the thought. And this distinction helps you gain distance from your thoughts, reducing the emotional grip. So I'm going to end it there. Once again, I'd recommend this meditation app called Calm. There's a whole bunch of people. You can choose whoever you want. I recommend Jeff Warren. He made it very accessible. And with 10 minutes a day, you start your journey. So thanks for listening. Thank you to Jeff Warren. And hit me up if you want any recommendations.
So there's scientific proof that people who meditate, if you got injured and you meditate on your injury, the people who meditate about their injury are in less pain than someone that doesn't meditate on their injury. So through meditation, physical pain, people rate it as not as painful as if they didn't meditate.
Interesting.
So
I wonder
it transcends the mind into physicality.
Wonder if it has to do with like rumination. You're ruminating on your pain. Larry.
Is there a distinction between this type of meditation and the 80s transcendental meditation?
Yeah, they're different things entirely. Yeah. Yeah, I think transcendental is like a spiritual thing. Whereas
it's based on a mantra.
Okay.
Focused on.
But this meditation is like just a state of calm that you can enter.
Maybe they're both, though, some people need a mantra in order to enter that sort of calm.
Maybe. Well, yeah, there's all kinds of techniques, like things that you can, like a mantra or a home base, but I didn't want to share all that tonight. But
Offering advice.
Wait, you're stuck.
People in the army, so my brother told me that they say, repeat, you will fall asleep over and over again, and you may ruminate on other thoughts that you're just telling yourself over and over again that you will fall asleep, and it really works.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you tried it?
Try it tonight. Yeah, I tried it for the past 3 months.
Wow. That's amazing.
And imagine yourself on like a beautiful place. On a beach.
Charley, you're up.
The opposite of
Patient is intentionally jarring.
You're welcome.
It could be. I've changed my presentation like 2 times in my head while just sitting down. So they're different subjects, but I'm gonna stick with what I made. Thank you. All right. Oh, yeah, I think I could figure it out, but sorry, there you go. Right. F11, I believe.
It's Linux, so it's a little, it's Linux, so
Okay.
the
Gotcha.
bindings are a little different. Cause I was trying to pull up.
So what I would like to do is the last, there's a YouTube link in the last slide. I'd like to start with that. And then go to the Yeah, thank you. Right there. That's the title. Yep. And then pause it. I'll get through the thing. Pause it. And then...
There are 3 simple changes.
I was wondering how the audio.
Yeah, thank you. Mute it, play through. And then pause it as soon as it comes out, turn the sound on. Thank you. That's what that's what it was. Pausing immediately. Great. Thank you so much. And then, no, I wanted to be there. I actually set the times, but that's fine. Totally goodbye. I can handle this with the mouse right now, I think. Cool. As soon as it. Thank you. It actually might be good to help it. All right. Well, 1 second. I reloaded it just because I'm not sure. Great, great. I think I'm gonna be fine to drag it to the left. All right. Thank you, everybody. I do. I am going to show a video first and then do which I had at the end of the presentation, but thinking about, I think it's sort of valuable to show you the video at the beginning. So it's an excerpt of this body reaction that a person is having while performing. Should I full screen it first? I should.
The theme is neuroscience.
It's not me.
And they go all the ways up into the neck and the shoulders. Now you can see the
this sort of reaction in a person's body. What is happening is the person's not controlling that. It's voluntary. And it is part of it's called a tremor response. And I figured I should show it to you at the beginning because it'll be more helpful to have seen that. So, Camille, I'm probably going to use you again to help me. All 3. Function all 3. Yeah.
Presentation on Camille.
Yeah.
Unsung hero. You're Chomsky.
I feel like George's corner is right for.
Don't want to ruin the
Thank you. Can I also read it off of the screen as well? That's wonderful.
So I'll just make that bigger.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. TRE is called tension and trauma release exercises. Let's see, and that's the subject of my presentation for today. Let's make sure that this is working as intended. Great. First question is, what is trauma? It's important to talk about this because I think that having a part in the name, people get, I guess, a little nervous, myself included, about what it could mean, what it might bring up. Trauma is just a disturbing experience that it can happen once, it can happen over time, multiple different times. I think it's something that I don't know if I know a single person that hasn't experienced trauma. I think we're lucky if we've had very little of it in our life. And so I guess that's the first question, the first thing that I wanted to bring up in this presentation. And so trauma has this ability to be stored and is often stored in the body. And there's this muscle that TRE, tension trauma release exercises, specifically seems to target, which is responsible for a whole bunch of this tension in the body, the psoas muscle that runs from basically here in the back of your spine through the pelvis and attaches the upper body to the lower body. It's also the way that I think about it is that it's this muscle that you use to protect your vulnerable stomach. Often gets engaged when you are in that situation where you're running for your life or whatnot. You need this muscle to protect you, to run, to fight, to do all of those things. Yeah. And let's see. It's highly responsive to stress and trauma. It's activated in the fight or flight response. And I also didn't put this in here, but it also does not in our daily activity of just sitting in chairs and whatnot. It doesn't seem that it gets the stretching, the movement, the release that it tends to need. So TRE, this tension and trauma releasing exercises, are a bunch of simple physical movements designed to help release that tension that accumulates from stress and trauma. And these exercises tire out, and I'll show you a few more of these details in the next slide, this area of your body, low back, hips, thighs, and to a point where they start shaking. And then this tremor response comes on, and your body, similar to maybe if you've seen a nature show where like an antelope gets away and it'll like do this full body shiver really quickly, and then it will run along. That is a way that it is believed by me, I guess, and other people. I'm not sure if it's provable. I don't have that that it helps combat trauma, and we keep it from landing in your body. Is the thought. Yeah.
Are we gonna do this?
That was the impetus behind this. There's absolutely no room for it to happen right now.
Right
Yeah.
across the table.
I'm trauma dance right now.
All of our dogs have trauma.
Like shaking?
No, they shake.
Yeah.
That's why dogs are so chill.
Yeah. Perhaps. It's very accessible by many people. It's something you can do on your own. I bring that up because also if you're doing it, you can do it to a certain sort of level that it helps reduce things, or you can go kind of deep doing this thing. So I want to be aware that like things can and may come up if you do TRE. So please like think about what that might be like and what support you might need, etc. if you choose to do this sort of thing. And let's see. These exercises, which I wanted to demonstrate, and maybe later on Eric's going to send out an email and I'll have more information about what they are, which don't easily fit into this slide presentation, are a bunch of exercises that start with like warming up the body and stretching for doing a set of like, I call them the 4 core exercises that I described, which I described in the second bullet point, are calf raises. There's body weight squats and wall sits like this. And then the last, you do these until your like leg is shaking almost by itself. And then the last one is the person is on the ground and they're doing a back flat and they're lifting their hips off of the ground, which in a way with the knees open really is the last thing that hits the psoas and it starts this shaking motion. This is called the tremor response, which was what you saw probably had started like a minute ago from where that video was. And so then there's these exercises that come afterwards that are used to promote that shaking, moving throughout the body and finding the spots it's supposed to hit. And I've done this a couple times and I walked away from it and I was thinking about what thing that I had experienced that maybe others hadn't in this room, and I was excited to bring it back up. I did it last night myself, and it was the thing that I needed to do to make sure that it was worthwhile to write this. But thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Can I ask you a question?
$5.
So do you just like do those 4 exercises and then?
You do about 5 starting exercises to to just warm your body up for those things. And you do those exercises, like one of the first one would be just like going down on one leg as much as you like, I guess a deep knee bend until your legs start shaking. And it's this systematic way of like putting them at a relatively, they call it a 7 out of 10, I guess, in terms of exhaustion, but it's enough that it's shaking involuntarily, that the muscle has worked enough that it, I don't know how that actually makes it work, but you hit these muscle groups systematically in a way that your body will just like keep vibrating in this, like those muscles will shake and they'll shake without you like exerting them necessarily.
Like after you're done?
Yeah, right. So like if I were to do this exercise and tire out maybe the back of my leg, and no longer use the back of my leg because I'm lying on the ground or something, it would tend to not shake because it's like, well, I'm not under duress or under stress or exertion, I guess is the term. So yeah.
Very cool.
So like a couple things I would love to just like add on to this
Please.
whole thing. Cranial sacral massage, like whole thing, like your cranium and your sacrum, which is like your tailbone, which is what he was referencing, around your psoas, hold a lot of trauma, which is a great, thing to think about. And there's a book, The Body Keeps the Score, which coincides with a lot of what he's kind of referencing here, which are like another type of massage, craniosacral, which involves a lot of emotions with your sacrum, which is the psoas, kind of area in your cranium. So just stuff like if you want a book or even another type of massage to get, those are 2 things that coincide right with what he's talking about right there,
Yeah.
So
one of the supporting exercises is actually to take the fingers under the back of the occipital ridge. Is that correct? And pull, and it invites the shaking, the tremor to make its way up in that area. You'll see people start shaking in their shoulders and neck and whatnot. So yeah.
That's what I watched this video with Charley last night, and the guy who did these exercises, I mean, he sustained that shake for a long period of time. It was like 10 minutes or something.
Yeah.
And it was kind of tiring, but the guy said that like he's a younger guy, and he said like all these emotions kind of came with it.
Yeah.
He was feeling very like, so I guess it's more than just a physical, it's like an emotional.
Is there some sort of prescribed for people who practice this, subscribed like therapeutic framework afterwards or when that's happening, like to help you?
Yeah, there are professionals that help, teach people this. There are people that like, I guess I'd call them sitters kind of, or like people that
Are there questions you answer like once it happens? Or like things you try to think about?
I don't think that there's necessarily a prescription. I mean, again, of course, it depends on what sort of things you might want to be getting out of it, right? It's if you have something in mind or something comes up. I don't think there's any sort of like questions or things that you'd specifically ask. I think it's similar to like the therapeutic process where you're sort of, if you're with another person that's doing it, you're just sort of there with them and their experience, not really guiding it, but yeah. Hope that was helpful.
It was.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right.
right, so we're gonna take another break. We got some quick reinforcements. And we'll reconvene and then we have a final set of what is it? Chirdy first, and then Alice, and then Mark.
Right there. Man, I'm so glad that's done. I cannot tell you what what's up to. No, because I wouldn't have been ready.
They're not actually.
And they bought, so I was like, inspired to
Oh, yeah.
Hello, welcome back from our sushi break. That was wonderful. So when I was thinking of what I wanted to present today, it's taking me a while to come up with some inspiration. And that particular thing has been hard for me to find these days. Sometimes I describe myself as an optimist, despite having considered the facts. But even for me, finding optimism has been a little bit hard lately. I don't know why. So I was like searching my idea, where I've been searching for my optimism in the oddest places was people who tried to do a really hard thing and failed at it. Again, where did this idea come from? But all the famous failures that you look for, all the examples that are very prominent that they want to give you are people that like failed at something within their lifetime and then like it worked out for them in the end. Like Oprah she failed at something and then like she's Oprah now. Like that's not what I'm looking for. That's not the vibe that I needed. So I was thinking like people that tried to do this big thing and it never came true for them. Like within their lifetime, it never worked. But they set in motion something that did work eventually. So people like us who want to do good things, I don't want us to lose hope that the things that we're doing don't matter because they hopefully soon, but maybe not that. So that's my theme here. So as I was looking for examples, right, like the early suffragists in the 1800s, like they had this idea that they wanted to expand the right to vote to all women, or at least to white women. So the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848 happened about 72 years before women got the right to vote. And this gathering, I actually, before I started researching, I thought this was a gathering to like work towards the right to vote, but it turns out that that was even a controversial topic here at a gathering of people working towards women's rights. They had an argument about whether women's suffrage should be part of the Declaration of Sentiments. And actually, Frederick Douglass was one of the people that convinced them to keep it there. So the people that organized this convention in 1848 never got to vote. It never happened for them. But it did happen eventually. Spoiler alert, it did happen eventually. So I can't look forward 72 years from now and tell you what will or won't happen. But what I can tell you is what you're doing matters. And if you feel passionate about a cause and you want to make the world better, try. Because it might hopefully make a difference, even if not for you, for my child, for your children. And another reason why I picked the suffragist movement is because, right, they were imperfect. So Frederick Douglass, who asked them to, or encouraged them to keep the right to vote in their Declaration of Sentiments, was the only Black person there. That's not an accident, right? Like, these were imperfect people. And when I say that, I don't mean to say, oh, like, it's okay because the ends justify the means or whatever. No, it was bad. Like, what they were not, this was not good. So the inspiration I draw from that is that change happens from, not from saints, but from people. So I'm not perfect. I'm sure some of you are, most of you are. But that's what I want to take away from that. Change happens from people. So that's what I want to leave us here.
That was the first 5-minute presentation. Congrats.
Perfect, but it turned out.
Fair comment.
Sure.
Thanks. I just think it's such a interesting and important part that we don't know where our work is taking us, and like you pointed out rightfully so, is people will die before they've seen their work be where they get to where they want to be. But even if in the future, which obviously none of us can see, we don't ever get to where we're going, it's just as important to still work toward that. Because that is throughout history, like we think about the natives that are living here and William Penn that's tried to work with the natives. And there's this failed experiment over 8 years and only passed away. The Native Americans and the colonists, their relationship fell apart. But do we say that, well, he shouldn't have even tried to be nice to Native Americans, like give them respect? It wasn't perfect, but we all still need to try and reach for that, no matter what the odds might seem opponents.
Yeah.
It's really connected that.
Yeah.
Thanks to William for that 6-minute presentation.
I just wanted to comment, piggyback on what Whittier is saying, kind of tie this back to like 2 years ago. And does anyone remember the Wright brothers when I was presenting?
Yeah. Presentation.
Yeah. But like it's a reminder, like all of these things are reminders that like when you're pushing towards something, whether it's something like political or extending the right or like forefront of a new idea in whatever capacity, right? People are going to think you're crazy at first. Right. And it's not until you prove that it's possible and it becomes normal that people go, yeah, of course, that's what you do. Right. So like, don't be discouraged when people aren't hopping on the bandwagon immediately. Right. Like, sometimes it takes time and sometimes it takes even generations to get somewhere.
Here, you can hear
it. Yeah, good job.
All right, Alex, you're up.
So video, you can play that or you want to just like get I mean, I threw it in. You might not. Wow. But like, I'm tired. Hello. How's it going, Angel Faces?
Show your shoes, show your shoes.
Yeah.
Shoes are pretty sexy. So today I will be talking about my favorite animals. Everyone else were academic weapons, but I'm going to be talking about my favorite animal. I'm also a teacher, so you have a little bit of work to do. incomplete sentences, you must answer. Why is it important to be an active listener? And I am going to ask that you ignore this entire slide because I was not actively listening all night. Pretend I didn't do that. You do need to pay attention though, because there's a pop quiz at the end. So wait. I guess we'll
What grade do you teach?
6th grade.
Oh, it's gonna be a hard place then.
Yeah, it's gonna be very difficult. 6th graders are really intelligent. All right, welcome to Alice's favorite quirky animals. First one, capybaras. That's it. Cute pictures. They're pretty cute. They're friends with everyone. That being said, this is a great segue into my next favorite quirky little animal, pelican.
Wow.
They enjoy eating. They enjoy eating fish. Pretty self-explanatory. They enjoy eating. I can't even see what that is, but I don't have my glasses on. But I think it's eating another bird.
Yeah.
They like eating anything at all. So it's even eating itself, as you can see. This capybara's in. There's a pelican eating a capybara. They're pretty hot. One more time. All right. Next, very obviously, here's the people's princess, Mudeng. If you don't know who Mudeng is, then I'm so sorry you're old and you're uneducated. Mudeng, I'm not gonna lie, I can't read a single thing that's on those slides. Wait. Oh yeah. Okay, Mudeng. She's 6 months old. She's a baby. She's very cute. Her personality is that she is bouncy and slimy and she crashes out easily. If you don't know what crashes out means, you're gonna have to look that up because you're old. Some of her lore includes she is an Asian princess. Her name means bouncy pork and pie. If you've ever seen a video of her, she bounces around and she looks like a pig, so bouncy pork. Here's a quick ELA lesson. Mudeng's mom is always munching. If you ever watch a video of Mudeng, her mom is always in the background munching on something. If you don't know what alliteration is, then you need to go back to 6th grade. All right. Couple of more pictures of Mudeng just being cute. This is her being eepy. Babies sleep all day. This is her crashing out. And this is her attacking the city. Let's see if this video works. Oh, it does. And there she is, attacking the city. I don't really know how to go back from here. Thank you.
Let's go going back.
I can't see anything.
It's not just like going to sleep.
Yeah,
You're tired.
yeah.
All right, my next favorite animal. You can't see me because I am transparent. Bam, gone. This is the glass frog. The glass frog is special because the glass frog is transparent, so you can see through it. He also is really special because his eyeballs are like us. So we're basically frog. His eyeballs are on the front of his face, which means he has peripheral vision. Every other frog usually has eyeballs the size of their head. So glass frogs are pretty cool. Next one, my favorite one of all time, the Humboldt squid. They're very cutesy. They're very demure. Look how cute that one is, smiling at us. Bam. Humboldt squids, they have beaks. It's pretty disgusting. On the right,
It's its
the
tongue.
beak.
That's just its tongue, or?
Well, the tongue and the beak.
So like, do you see the middle of that squid? The sharp part? That's its beak.
Yeah, the beak, and then that's the tongue underneath it.
Yeah.
And what's the bristles? I heard there's taste.
I don't know. I don't know that much. I just like it. We'll skip the video because I don't feel like playing it.
I would like to.
Okay, we'll watch a little bit of it.
How it stands with next like.
All right, next. I really like them because they're really cute, as in they have friend groups. So they travel in packs of like thousands. I don't know about thousands, it could be hundreds. Maybe it's like actually just like 4 or 5. But in this picture, it looks like a lot. So Skip the video. It's a lot. Next one. This is Doodle. He is a very odd cat dog. He's very stupid. He's dumber than a rock. He will eat anything. He also screams with a blank expression. So he'll just be screaming and there is nothing in his eyeball. He loves to eat and poop. He doesn't like really doing anything except for eating. This is a picture of him in my kitchen where my mom's making kimchi, which is a long process, and he's just begging for food. He doesn't really like doing anything, and he does have a bombastic side eye. So that's just him judging everyone, even though he has no thoughts in his head. Here's other cute pictures of him. That's him staring at his shoe that fell off. And he like probably stared at it for like 30 seconds, and that was it. Credits. Credits go to me and Doodle, and pictures from my family group chat. Oopsies. Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns? Everyone ready for their pop quiz? Oh, I got it.
Alice told me like earlier this week that she lies to her kids all the time while she's teaching.
That's a lie.
That's not a
I'm not really sure about his
Like,
Concerns
this is
incoming.
so ready to come out.
Concerns incoming.
That is definitely happening.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why he's trying to bring me down right now. So I'm rightfully charged. Yeah. Anyway, I lied. There's no pop quiz. Basically, you should read to your kids because the kids are illiterate. Phonics are important. Please tell your kids not to be a bully because your kids are fucking awful. And if you're a millennial, you're terrible at parenting. Kids are not okay. Save our souls. If you care about your children at all, you would Venmo me. And if you don't, you are racist. The end.
Don't talk to me about that. That was a wild ride. That was a good ride.
Marcus, last question.
Oh, we can't do Mark dirty twice. You're supposed to go first, Mark.
I know. It was.
Okay.
This is what it looks like.
Presenter mode.
Is there any way to get rid of that top part?
Do you have center notes on here? Or you...
No, I don't want the notes on there.
Okay. So then I will just get rid of the screen.
Like the hall. We pull up the hall down. Pull up the door for I gotta go to the bathroom.
Yeah, take a dump and watch the slides on the toilet.
I definitely missed out on putting a QR code in my slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can't see, if you want to pop that QR code up, it's going to be a link to the presentation. The presentation's hyperlinked. Okay, so there's a bunch, links to sources, articles, videos, documentaries, whatever you want to look into.
No, it's not. It's cut off on the screen.
It's cut off.
Get a little minimizer.
Oh,
this guy's teeth. That's like those guys are too.
No, I'm always gonna leave it. Slide ahead of you.
You good?
You know, hold on.
You might have to download Google Drive. All right, moving on without you. Is it going to be cropped like this the whole time?
Yeah.
All right. Here's my context. The scene.
Here we go.
It's going to be the U.S. Civil War. Hopefully, I'll go through this pretty quick. But if you don't know, the Civil War was obviously like the bloodiest conflict that America's ever been involved in by far. Okay, if you add up like every single American war together, all the KIA, it's still less than the American Civil War. Okay, and that's with like the traditional estimates for the number of men killed in the conflict. Okay, so you can kind of see that up there.
That's
Why
US.
are there two civil wars up there?
It's because it's showing you the war overall and it's showing you northern casualties and southern casualties.
Is this just US casualties?
Yes,
or-
just U.S. casualties. Yep, for the wars that we've been involved. There's been 2 recent studies done examining those numbers, and each time they do a new study, the number gets higher and higher. So the most recent one was done a few years ago, and the number came out to 750,000. And that was examining census data before, during, and after the war, and at the state level. Before, like that number 620,000 was kind of just like, hey, this is how many Northerners died. We're just gonna adjust like the Southern population to match the Northern population, and we'll just double it. So it was very like wishy-washy. So we got more data. So it's roughly over 700,000 is the number.
What's the US population?
That was like I think close to 5% of the entire U.S. population died in the Civil War. Something crazy, something high like that. Probably like 3 to 5. If you look at the right there, we got like some bloodiest moments in the war. 3 days at Gettysburg, there was 51,000 casualties. 1 day at Antietam was 23,000 casualties. 10 minutes at Cold Harbor, 7,000 Northern soldiers died in the charge. Okay, so if you think about the entire Vietnam War, the entire war in Afghanistan, you can kind of see what this war was like. Generally, men died in horrific ways because of the changes in technology, kind of outweighing battlefield tactics. They still fought traditionally, but they had modern guns, modern artillery, and it took a while for that to catch up. So the men were devastated by this. Entire generation of men kind of wiped out. In southern places, entire towns are destroyed, killed. They basically lose all able fighting men. So society had to confront this in ways that they never could have imagined. And one of the unique things about this, if you look at how the men died, most of the men died from disease, and that was from the wounds and their inability to be treated appropriately on the battlefield and getting infections and other diseases. Good so far?
Why is DC so lazy?
Delaware is pretty low there, huh?
Yeah, I'm just surprised California's on the list.
That was the USCT. So almost 300,000 black men fought for the North in the Civil War after the Emancipation Proclamation, which enabled them to join the Army. All states, yeah. So other core concept here. America back then and America today is very religious. So most Americans are very Christian, and they believe in something called ars moriendi, which translates to the art of dying. Okay, so being very religious, they believe in something called the good death. So the idea that if someone's dying, they're going to be surrounded by like family and friends. They're going to be with a priest who's going to, they're going to ask for forgiveness of their sins, and basically the family's going to be there to basically help that person transition into the afterlife. So if you have like an entire generation of young men, husbands, brothers, sons going off to fight in this war, most of them don't come back. And for the people who are sending off their loved ones to go fight, it was very hard for them to grapple with the fact that they're never going to get to see that person ever again. They're not going to have a funeral. They're never going to say goodbye. And that was something that society had a really hard time dealing with. Probably the most recent example would be COVID-19. Like the first few months of COVID was similar to this, where families couldn't visit their loved ones in the hospital until they were gone. All right. Most of those soldiers, not most, but a good chunk of them, their bodies were never identified. So that's where you get this idea of being unknown. That comes from Walt Whitman. You probably, if you've ever been to Arlington National Cemetery, you visit the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier that kind of represents all the unknown or unidentified bodies in all American wars. So that's kind of my introduction. Any questions so far?
Leave off a big note.
Like the sense of like continued information about like how many people died. Like, do you know, or do you think, or have a projection of like when that might end? Of like, okay, this is the exact amount, or like in 5 years, 10 years, this is the amount of people that possibly died in this war?
I don't think we're ever gonna have like an exact amount. Because right now, like each scientific studies, like they're doing like estimates based upon the data they have available to them. So that most recent one, some people don't agree with it. So it's somewhere between 600, 750,000 is kind of the number.
Why did they fight the Civil War? It was about states' rights, right?
That was my last presentation, if you remember.
Yeah.
We talked about the lost cause and the manipulation of history to perpetrate a myth over reality.
Super relevant for today.
Oh yeah. All right. So anyway, the person I'm going to talk about is kind of underrepresented in U.S. history. It's going to actually kind of connect to some other presentations to see if you can guess who this person is. This person was a teacher.
Mark.
I mean,
Custer.
they founded some early public schools, one of the first public schools in New Jersey. She was one of the first female workers for the U.S. government.
Clara Barton.
You got it. It's Clara Barton. Her nickname during the Civil War was the Angel of the Battlefield. She founded an organization called the Office of Missing Soldiers, which we'll get to. She was also nicknamed the Heroine of Andersonville, which is a famous prison.
I think there's an E on.
And most people just know her. My bad. Thanks for bringing me down. Most people, though, just generally know her as the founder of the American Red Cross. So there she is. Who knew who she was or has heard of her before? Okay. So hopefully this story I tell is stuff that's new for you.
Wait, go back a sec. The other thing.
We're teachers. We're struggling. So in her 20s, she became a teacher in Massachusetts. Then she moved to Jersey. And that's where she started one of the first public schools there. And she was so successful at starting this school that they ended up building a much larger school. So her popularity in the community led to them constructing a new school, and they immediately hired a man to run the school. And that person had double the salary of Clara. So when you Venmo me, give me $10 instead of
Now I have access to your payroll.
Yeah, found that out today. So Clara, she resigned in protest, basically abandoning the system that she set up, and she decided to work for the government. So she's at the U.S. Patent Office, and she is working hard and doing a really good job. And that earns a lot of resentment from the male workers because she's outworking them. And her salary is similar to theirs. And she's also single, and these men are attracted to her, and she's kind of denying their advances. So they just start making rumors about her. Basically she kind of describe her as a whore. And other various devious things. She kind of maneuvers through all that. But the new administration in the upcoming election doesn't like the fact that there's women working for the government, so she loses her job. So there's a period here where she basically becomes extremely depressed, suicidal even, and she kind of has to overcome, kind of find her place, and the war starts. She wants to fight. She can't fight. She's kind of like a tomboy. And she decides to become a nurse. So when she goes to the new Army Nursing Corps, it's led by a woman named Dorothea Dix. And Dorothea Dix describes the perfect nurse as plain almost to repulsion in dress, which was the exact opposite of Clara Barton. Clara Barton was young, attractive, single, personable, had sparkling eyes, charming, never married, all characteristics of me. I do not have a waist like a wasp, though.
Not yet.
Yeah, that's the one thing that doesn't happen. So all these attractive women that try to join the nursing corps are denied because Dorothea Dix only wants older women, unattractive, that aren't going to get these injured soldiers in a tipsy. So she's struggling again. She doesn't have work. So she basically creates her own like relief and nursing organization through money she has saved over the years for working for the government, not as a teacher. Sorry, I'll stop. And she basically becomes her own nurse in her own little way by trying to maneuver to get to battlefields to help men that are wounded. And she needs to get like inroads, and she meets this quartermaster who's in charge of like deployment of resources. And he gives her paperwork to actually get to two major battles, Cedar Run and the Second Battle of Bull Run. Once she has those papers, she immediately forges new papers, basically get right to the front. So she's kind of sliding or maneuvering here. And she's able to literally accompany the Union Army, the Army of the Potomac, to the Battle of Antietam, which is one of the major battles of the Civil War. And she finds herself in the midst of like the bloodiest day in the entire war at a place called the Cornfield. And if you know familiar with this battle, there's farmhouses right along the lines. She's in one of those farmhouses, basically tending to the wounded as the men are kind of streaming from the battlefield. There's like artillery shells going off everywhere. A guy gets killed next to her, and she's basically working like nonstop for like 2 days straight, tending to the wounded. And this is where she becomes famous, and she gets that nickname by the press, the Angel of the Battlefield. And for about a year, she is doing this. She's a nurse. Her organization is growing. People are donating to her cause. And the government doesn't really like it too much because she's outshining them. And she's basically demonstrating that, you know, medical relief and aid to these injured soldiers is not up to par. So she's kind of slowly kind of pushed aside by the American military, the American government. So she develops a relationship with a guy named Senator Henry Wilson. He's in charge of the military and the Senate. Some people think they had an affair, but she basically uses him to get what she wants. And that is to have a position at the front as the war's kind of taking place. Towards the end of the war, she has this task where she wants to basically find the missing soldiers, the unknowns, okay, so that the families can receive some type of solace. And she's very persistent in trying to get this done. And the government basically kind of looks at her as kind of like an annoying gnat, including Abraham Lincoln. So finally, like, fine, you can do this. It's a very arduous task of data collection. She formed the Missing Soldiers Office during the war. Basically, what ends up happening is she puts out a call in all major newspapers asking soldiers to take a look at a list of all the unknown men and see if they know who that person is, and see if they knew like the whereabouts of that person's death, how to find them, where they died, maybe where they were buried. Okay. And then very quickly, she ends up getting all these communications, ends up receiving over 68,000 letters with detailed information about these missing men. So by the end of the war, like in the first year, she's able to identify the remains of 22,000 soldiers. So if you think about that, some of these battles had taken place years before. So that meant that her and her organization and men were going to battlefields, digging up mass graves, trying to identify bodies. That was a job. She tried to do it by the book. During the Civil War, all these industries popped up related to death. Families paid large amounts of money to get anything, remains, and oftentimes people took advantage of that, and they ended up getting remains that obviously weren't their son, husband, brother, what have you. The next thing she becomes famous for is Andersonville Prison, which is a famous Confederate prison camp in Georgia. Let's see here. One of its survivors, a guy named Dorrance Atwater, he was in charge of keeping track of all the men that died in Andersonville Prison. And he was doing it for the Confederates, but secretly he was kind of keeping his own roll of the same exact data. And he was able to smuggle that out. And when he heard about Clara Barton and the Office of Missing People, he contacted her. But before that, he contacted the military, and the military tried to buy the list from him, and he refused. Then they threatened him that they were going to seize it as like war contraband. But he was able to get that list to Clara Barton, while the military and the War Department basically shelved it. They weren't interested in dealing with it. Clara Barton, through her persistence again, is able to get appointed to kind of a group to go to Andersonville Prison with Dorrance Atwater, with the list. They were able to disinter the mass graves there. And on that list, basically had the names of every person. Everything was numbered. So they were able to match the numbers to the names and give them a burial. And Andersonville's a giant cemetery now. So of the roughly almost 13,000 men that died at Andersonville, they were able to identify almost all of them.
That's insane.
And Andersonville was a hellhole. Yeah, I will just leave it at that. Yeah. So Clara, why you should know her besides the Red Cross stuff, she helps kind of like redefine the relationship that the government has to its citizens, especially in a time of war, and how to handle military deaths. So like back then, what didn't they have? Each soldier.
Dog tag.
They didn't have dog tags. Okay, so like little things like that, like when she was at the medical facilities with the dying soldiers, she would always like write down and keep in a giant log roll like what their name was, where they were from, you know, how to write a letter to their family if they were going to die, because that was like a very important thing. So that became like common practice because of Clara Barton, and then all the things that she did afterwards led to things like the creation of national cemeteries, the government taking responsibility for like field hospitals. So the war changed that, but Clara Barton was definitely a big cog in that change. So she was a teacher. She was the angel of the battlefield, the heroine of Andersonville, but I got a new nickname for her. She's the OG childless cat lady.
Nice.
I'm sure she did.
That's teacher
Yeah. But most people just know her as the founder of the American Red Cross.
Is the question time?
Sure.
Do you have any idea why it was like? My experience is that, looking back on it, wow, it seems really important to do that sort of thing for people, but I wouldn't have thought to do that. Do you have any idea why or how she came to see this as such an important thing to be done?
I think it's just her willingness to get to the battlefield, and upon like visiting those first battlefield experiences, she like goes to and sees like what the conditions that the men are in dying and what that looks like. You know, guys getting their legs and arms amputated, just like not having like the adequate supplies, how to deal with like infections and wounds. Like it was all just very basic. They didn't know how to handle that many casualties in such a very quick space. So like that kind of set her on the trajectory to changing the entire rule of like the Army Corps of Nursing. And that because she became so popular in the press and the media, it kind of put pressure on the government to act and change how they do things.
In terms of caring for injured. Okay. Thank you.
Just more of a comment than a question, but maybe we shouldn't take so lightly talk about, a second civil war, which is becoming, political rhetoric these days.
It would be pretty bad.
What state did you come from?
What's up?
Where'd you come from? What state?
Massachusetts. Town called Northampton.
What town?
Northampton.
She came from Northampton.
Yeah, I just made that up. Anything else?
You live there. I don't think it's there. Just like it.
Teachers will lie to you, I tell you.
Yeah, they'll tell you can grow up to be anything. Oxford, MA.
Wow. Oh, Oxford. I've been there.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, so this concludes the presentations. Feel free to schmooze, hang out, eat sushi, and don't forget plants.
Thank you, Charlie. $10 though.
You got it.
$10.
I don't see gender. I just give mine.
There's a take plants and buy our own plant station.
Like in that first graph, had all those men from the north that couldn't find the it, and the south had like
Why like there wasn't like basically the Southern soldiers, like a Southern man aged like 18, I think to like 45, they had to fight. There was no choice. It was like compulsory. And not in the north. Yeah, we had a draft and we had drafts, but we had to know way more people. And like as the war progressed, their military service was mandatory, but they had to serve the entire duration of the war. Because it was like their service was 3 years, and then that changed to until it's over. Basically, like to survive the war as a Southern soldier, it's like it'd be like a miracle. Yeah. Yeah, it's a boat taxi. That's a good question. I didn't figure this out. Yeah. I don't think you have to take courses. I think you might just have to pass like a little background check. Yeah. And you work teacher. Yeah. Yeah, it won't be a problem. So it's actually like a process. No problem. Yeah, I know there's a huge demand for it. So Your Honor, you really want to do it. I think you have the ability to kind of quickly treat it. You're probably not going to want to. Yeah, so like, orders would be a really good environment in the Army. A lot of different ways. Now we go through back. Yeah, so they got enough. You got it. I feel like nowadays, like that happens, like oh, crap. Everything's you have the
Sorry.
Pretty cool, you know. Good seeing you.